Shout Factory TV, changing the channel.
Welcome everyone to the inaugural Shout Roundtable. I'm sure we'll come up with a much fancier name for this and sometime in the future. But this is actually where we invite some guests to chat about the big pop culture news of the week. And joining me this week, we have, of course, my co-host of your weekly shout out, Jennifer Landa. Hi, Jen.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It wouldn't be a show without you. We've also got Shout Factory's own digital video programming manager, Mr. Ben Saleh.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Good.
Audience.
And then we've also got our special guest this week. We have actor, TV writer, currently working on The Librarians on TNT. And you would recognize him from our Halloween H2O big deluxe box set, Mr. Adam Honbird.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Welcome, sir. So, guys, I think it goes without saying that the big news of the week is probably the Paul Feig, friend of Shout Factory via Freaks and Geeks, made a big announcement. We've all been talking about this Ghostbusters reboot, and he pitched it as a very female-centered cast, even making the announcement that it was going to be all female-driven. And he announced on Twitter the cast list. It's Kristen Wiig, Melissa McCarthy, Leslie Jones, and Kate McKinnon, many of which we know from SNL, and then Melissa McCarthy, who a lot of people might know from SNL, from two fantastic episodes. So what do you guys think about this? Is there anyone in the camp? Obviously, there are two camps of this. There are the folks who think that Ghostbusters is a holy franchise that should not be touched. Other people feel like the importance of getting an all-female driven franchise like this out is more important. Where do you guys stand? Jennifer, let's start with you.
Let it be known, I personally do not like reboots. I think it is unnecessary to remake a classic film that we all love. But that being said, I think it was actually a really smart and kind of fresh approach, if you're going to tackle the franchise, to have an all-female cast. Kristen Wiig, Melissa McCarthy have excellent on-screen chemistry. Leslie Jones was actually a scene stealer in Chris Rock's Top 5, so I think she's going to be hilarious. So I'm optimistic. I'm going to give it a shot.
Okay. Ben, how about you?
I agree with half of what Jennifer said. I definitely am wholly. I believe. Okay, first off, I don't understand why we have to make another sequel, a reboot of something that's already amazing. I don't really see the point of that. I mean, it's just further proof that Hollywood doesn't want to take a risk on anything that's original. As far as all-female cast goes, actually, I don't mind them, but I'd rather see them in their own franchise, start their own thing, give them a new opportunity to start something different, start something fresh and new. There's just so much inherent backlash of taking a classic franchise and trying to redo it again with an all-female cast, and unfortunately it sort of comes across as a little gimmicky, like the Expendables or whatever. It's just, come on, we can do better. You can do better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I actually agree with you on that. I think for me, I agree with Jennifer, certainly. I think the announcement of an all-female cast is pretty interesting and cool. Ghostbusters, I'm a product of the 80s, and for me, Ghostbusters was very instrumental in my childhood, and it is sort of sacred material for me. But that being said, I don't think it's I think it's fair game. If they come up with a great story for a sequel or a new addition to the franchise, then great. But to me, it feels a little bit like Ben said, a little gimmicky. It feels like, why now and why with these people? I think again, an all-female cast is really interesting. I'm all for that, but it's more than a gender issue for me. It's more a tone issue. I look at those women and I think kind of they are very funny, but they're also, they're sort of SNL sketch comedy, very kind of over the top. And and I think of the original Ghostbusters, and I think, well, even though the premise is very silly and over the top, the performances are actually pretty grounded. And Bill Murray's really the most outlandish one, and he still gives a pretty, even though he plays an asshole con man, smarmy guy, he's still kind of grounded, and so that's more the issue for me, is like looking at these women and thinking, well, are we going to get, sort of their typical performance, which is very, in my opinion, kind of one note and very over the top.
I agree. I think the interesting thing is you've got 4 cast members. Now, it would be unfair to say that the original Ghostbusters, we had 2 SNL alum in leading roles. We also had Harold Ramis, who had done a lot of stuff for like SCTV, and then Ernie Hudson, of course, who I guess was originally written to be Eddie Murphy. But you're right. The comedy is grounded. The characters are grounded. And unfortunately, while I know that Melissa McCarthy can do much better things, because we've seen her on like Gilmore Girls and stuff like that, her characters of late have been, I'm going to be loud, I'm going to fall down, I'm going to do this and that. Almost she's like the Chevy. She's the Chevy Chase of of today. And
and also a lot of those performances are coming from collaborations with Paul Feig too. So you kind of look at that, and that makes me a little. I like Paul Feig a lot. I like his stuff. I really like his stuff. But I look at that combination and I go, ooh, I just wonder if they're not going to be. I hope they can tone it down for this movie.
Yeah, I've got to hope that's a possibility. I'm not so I'm definitely not anti an all-female cast for Ghostbusters. I'm not anti any of this. I think if anything, I might be just anti another Ghostbusters. I don't know that I just don't know that we need one. I don't know that we needed the second. I felt like the second diluted the first enough that I just don't know that we need another one.
Seeing that second one in theaters when I was a kid, I was so into the first Ghostbusters movie, and even as, I forget how old I was, maybe I was 10 or something, but I saw it in theaters and was so disappointed, and I mean, and looking back, it's still pretty good, but like at the time, it just didn't hold a candle to the original. And this one too, I think maybe the reason the discussion came up in the first place was because Ivan Reitman and Harold Ramis and all those guys were talking about, hey, is there a third story we can do? That all kind of fell apart because Bill Murray dropped out, Harold Ramis died, and and I think at that point maybe Sony's going, well, hey, wait a second, like we still need a tentpole. Yeah. How can we make this work without all these original guys? Oh, well, why don't we hand over the reins? And so for me, it almost feels like, it's sort of gimmicky and a cash grab type thing. So I hope that everyone's heart is in the right place, but I'm a little skeptical.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually. I'm not against it. Like, if you're going to do it again, do like another one, I think this is a good gambit of the direction to go in. Because I'm thinking about it, I would not want to see this like remade with like Channing Tatum and I don't know, Jason Biggs. I don't know why I said Jason Biggs, but so I wouldn't want to see that version of that. I prefer like going in the with an all-female cast. That if you're gonna do it, that's the way to do it, I guess.
So let me pose a question to you guys. Well, and again, this is also, I'm not really sure whether is this a third movie? Is it like connected? Are these the daughters of the original Ghostbusters? Is this a remake of the original? Is there a reboot? Are they just starting from scratch? Like, I'm not sure what the deal is, but let's go with the exercise of like, hey, they're casting the original Ghostbusters as women. Or do you guys have any thoughts on who would be really like just nail those original performances and sort of make them their own?
I think that you guys are, it's so funny. I think that Melissa McCarthy can be really grounded. She did this fantastic character called Marbles. I don't know if you guys have seen her on YouTube. It is a great character study where she is so real. I didn't even know it was Melissa McCarthy. I thought this was a real woman living her life. I think that unfortunately sometimes the slapstick thing comes out, and as you said, certainly with Paul Feig, but I think that they have it in them. Kristen Wiig was in the Skeleton Twins, right, with Bill Hader, so they definitely have those performances in them. So I'm actually really excited about them. I like Leslie Jones. Who else would be? You know who I like? Who is that woman from The Office? Not Jenna Fisher. Oh, blast. They'll come to me. Someone else.
Who did she play on The Office?
She was also in Bridesmaids as well. She's like red hair. She's kind of like.
Oh, Ellie Kemper?
That's it, Ellie Kemper.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of fun, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I can see her. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. That'd be an interesting choice, certainly. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, like, just, you know, in the original Ghostbusters, the Bill Murray character was such he was such the cornerstone of it. I think he held that movie. Yeah, he really carried that movie, and he gives such a specific performance. I mean, his personality is so specific, and I was trying to think, like, who would be a good sort of parallel for him, and the person that I think might be interesting would be Julia Louis-Dreyfus, like looking at her performance in Veep, you know, like she's kind of plays like she can be an asshole, but she's also charming. She's got a little bit of an edge to her. You know, she's got a little bit of arrogance, and she's not afraid to get up in people's faces, but she's still charming the whole way, you know. So I thought she could be an interesting choice, maybe.
Genius. That's a genius choice.
Oh, well, thank you.
Now the question is, would you want to see the 3 surviving Ghostbusters and maybe even Rick Moranis, or you know, do you want to see them come back, Annie Potts come back to do cameos, or do we just let it go and hope this can carry it on its own? I don't know.
That's a good question.
Let it go. Let it go.
Yeah, I'm kind of down with that. Well, going into you know, we can't talk about reboots then without talking about the other big news of the week, and that was that supposedly Disney, when they bought Lucasfilm, of course, also got additional Indiana Jones movies from Paramount. So would you want to see the supposed dream casting of Chris Pratt as the new Indiana Jones?
Oh, we just lost Ben.
Ben hates the idea so much,
right.
he literally left.
Like, I'm out.
Oh.
Oh.
Adam,
So
what do you
everything's going to
think?
be okay, Ben. Everything's going to be okay.
There we go. We got him back. We were saying you hate the idea so much that you actually left.
True story.
So then, Ben, what do you think?
I like, my favorite type of Chris Pratt is fat Chris Pratt from Parks and Rec. I like him when he's like a little bit chunkier. He's got a funny hair that way. I don't know. In Fit, 0 Dark 30, Guardians of the Galaxy, Chris Pratt. I don't know. I guess he could do it. If you had to pick anyone in Hollywood, I guess I prefer him to Shia LaBeouf. So yeah, I'll go with it.
Well, that's certainly true.
I'll spend some money on that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for this one, I mean, I have sort of similar feelings about Indiana Jones as I do Ghostbusters, but I mean, I guess the bigger question is, can there be an Indiana Jones without Harrison Ford? Like, can you envision anybody in that role other than Harrison Ford?
Right.
And that's I think the first question to answer. Right. And then we get into, is Chris Pratt a good choice for that, right? And for me, honestly, I don't know. Like I do when I think Indiana Jones. Again, it's just such a specific personality. I mean, he owns that role. Again, he's got that sarcasm, he's got that grin, he's kind of rough around the edges and snarky, and it's not the years, it's the miles kind of thing. Right. And yeah, so I mean, I don't know that I will ever really be able to accept anybody other than Indiana Jones as Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones. But right. But okay, let's ignore that and say, okay, well, they're gonna make this movie. Who should they cast?
Yeah.
And for me, I kind of feel like, well, it's an interesting choice. I mean, he's really entertaining. He's really fun. He can certainly do action, as he's proven this year with Guardians of the Galaxy. But again, it sort of comes down to a personality thing. I think Chris Pratt is kind of known, like Ben said, for kind of, sort of Parks and Rec. Actually, all of his roles. I mean, he's kind of a teddy bear. No matter how bulked up he is, he's kind of this sort of tends to play kind of dim-witted, dumb, overly optimistic, happy-go-lucky teddy bear characters. And to me, that's not
even in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Even in Guardians, yeah. And he's a badass action star, but he's still a teddy bear. And I think Indiana Jones is not a teddy bear. He's got an edge to him. He's kind of world-weary. he he sort of reluctantly gets thrown into adventures, and he comes at everything with a sense of cynicism and sarcasm, I think.
Yeah.
And so I think I can certainly envision Chris Pratt physically embodying the role, and I can envision an Indiana Jones movie with him in it, but it's going to be a very different Indiana Jones. So maybe it's just a matter of doing the James Bond thing, where it's like Harrison Ford, Sean Connery, Chris Pratt, Roger Moore, or Timothy Dalton or something, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting point, and it's something that I find myself wondering is, James Bond works because every single person who's played James Bond has been a completely different James Bond. I mean, there have been certainly things similar about the character, but you can't say that Daniel Craig is the same person as Roger Moore or George Lazenby or Sean Connery. Like, they're all different incarnations of James Bond. And I think that works to their favor. And even you take a TV show like Doctor Who. That show has survived because it's reinvented itself so many times, but even that character is completely different from one to the next. So the question is, would Chris Pratt just be doing a Harrison Ford impersonation, or are you going to let him play maybe even a modern day archaeologist who is Indiana Jones? Or like, do you risk putting him in the 1930s, fighting against the Nazis, in a vested leather jacket, and a poet, a Herbert Johnson poet hat, and give him a bullwhip and a gun, and say, okay, now you're not Chris Pratt playing Indiana Jones. Now you are Indiana Jones. Go. Like, I don't know. I don't know that you could do it. It then becomes fanfic to me, or a fan film.
Yeah, I mean, Harrison Ford is Indiana Jones. He has a certain machismo that Chris Pratt does not have. I think what I love about Harrison Ford, is that he has this like old Hollywood toughness. No one else will be Han Solo. No one else should be Indiana Jones, in my opinion. So if they are going to do the film, then they really have to play up to Chris Pratt's strengths. So his humor and his kind of goofy boyishness. It's going to be a totally different spin, but I don't think that he can fill Harrison Ford's shoes. So they kind of have no choice but to go a completely different direction.
Right. They kind of have to lean away from Harrison Ford's performance.
Yeah, absolutely.
I kind of feel like they've done this already. They just didn't tell us. In that, I feel like The Mummy was an Indiana Jones remake. I sort of feel like Brendan Fraser was sort of being Indiana Jones in that role. I even feel Matthew McConaughey in Sahara was sort of the Indiana Jones role. And I think
Nathan Fillion on Firefly.
Nathan Fillion and even Nick Cage.
Nicolas Cage.
Nick Cage in the National Treasure movies. I mean, we've done it.
And Noah Wyle on The Librarians now too, actually.
There you go. Well,
yeah, I mean, he's sort of described his performance as, I'm playing Indiana Jones as played by Don Knotts, right? So it's definitely an Indiana Jones adventurer, but he's got his own little spin on it, and I don't think he would claim to be Indiana Jones, right? Like, I mean, he's doing something different, and so maybe that's the bottom line is Chris Pratt should be in an exciting adventure movie. Maybe it just shouldn't be Indiana Jones, right? They can just.
You've got Guardians of the Galaxy, and you've got the upcoming Jurassic World, where he is also playing an adventurer type. At what point in time do we now start to worry that Chris Pratt is now playing Chris Pratt? I start to worry about Chris Pratt overload.
Overexposure, yeah. I think, and Chris Pratt is very popular. He's in every big franchise, and I think Kristen Wiig and Melissa McCarthy are kind of the two go-to comedy women right now. They're they're very safe box office bets, and and I think in both these cases, I think the studio execs are kind of looking at it and going, oh well, yeah, we'll make a lot of money if this guy's really popular right now. Let's throw him in. But yeah, again, you risk overexposure, and you have to think about what's right for the franchise, because these are really beloved properties that people really care about. And if we waited 20, 30 years to make a new one, why now, right? Why now? It shouldn't just be the answer is Disney just acquired Indiana Jones and they want some money.
I always think that franchises are a little bit of the devil. I think I think the worst thing that can happen to a really great movie is that you have a sequel, because there's the inevitable need to broaden the audience. Like I said, you immediately dilute that original, and as a result, every movie I will defend until the day I die. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, not because it's a good movie, but because that's exactly where the franchise was headed. And, when you look at Raiders of the Lost Ark and everything is grounded in reality until you get to the end where they open the Ark, everything is so real and so visually, it's all there. And then by the time you get to Temple of Doom, they start using a lot more plastic trees in set pieces, and you throw the kid in there. Willie Scott is now a piece of comedy.
She's in her own little movie there, yeah.
Right, comic relief there. You're saving the kids. You've got all of this. You've got the mine car chase and all that stuff. Last Crusade, even more so, where now Indy is funny. Now Dad is funny. Marcus Brody, who was awesome in the original, is now an idiot who gets lost in his own museum. Sala, the greatest digger in Cairo, who can have a conversation with Indy about why you maybe shouldn't find the Ark, is doing jokes with newspapers, and it's a different flick.
Very much so. Yeah.
I don't mind that Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was like, well, have you guys not been watching the movies that have happened since Raiders? Like, it's happening. This is it.
Since we've been talking about a lot about like remakes and reboots, if you guys could reboot or remake any franchise, what would it be, and who would be in it?
Chris Hardwick actually said something on his podcast where it's like, why not remake really bad movies? So instead of like remaking all the classics, which you could really screw up, why not remake something that was really awful, or maybe like didn't quite do as well as it could have, but there was some potential there? Anything?
I agree.
That's a good point. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, why not take bad properties that have some potential and remake those? If you're going to remake anything, why not just go with something original?
Jen, as always, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It was fun.
Ben, thank you, sir. Very much appreciated.
This is fun. Thanks.
And Adam, thank you so much for being our special guest. Where can folks find you online?
You can find me online. I'm actually sort of newly on Twitter at the handle Big Man Tate. You can find me there, or you can find me on Facebook as well, just Adam Honbird.
Very cool. Thanks, guys.